First thing would be, is there any public comment? And I believe is it Eugene Beauregard? Did I pronounce that right? That's correct. You brought us something, and it's now public comment, so please come to the stage, and you'll see the light go on, and when it's yellow, it means you got 30 seconds left, but you have 3 minutes to address the council. And before you start, on my right is Councilmember Honda, and on my left is Councilmember Walsh, and I'm going to excuse Councilmember Tran, who is going to fly home to be here tomorrow. So, Mr. Eugene, your turn to give us public comment. And Eugene gave us this little thing at everybody's diet at the desk. So please address us.
Thank you.
And then our council president is just arriving, so welcome. Okay, Eugene, your turn.
I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Eugene Beauregard. I'm a homeowner in the English Gardens area of Federal Way for the past 10 years. I'm here tonight to ask you to look into what I believe is a serious breach of responsibility on the part of Waste Management, in that they seem to be unable to adhere to the terms of the contract that they signed with the city in year 2020, and it extends to 2030. Under the terms of that contract, Waste Management assured the city that they had examined all parts of this city and they could provide service, and they were aware that in some instances that service may be hindered by narrow streets. So there was a clause in the contract which required them to obtain smaller trucks if they were unable to access those smaller streets. In the case of my particular cul-de-sac, for the last year and a half, Waste Management has repeatedly terminated our service, claiming that the street was inaccessible, or their term is blocked. I submitted to you a photograph taken by a Waste Management driver that caused them to terminate service twice in April because the street, according to them, this photo depicts the street as blocked. It obviously is not blocked, but that's the only thing necessary for Waste Management to terminate service. I don't know exactly who can remedy this situation. I've spent the last year and a half interacting with the city to no avail, the administration. So I decided to come and ask that you examine the possibility of making Waste Management responsible for the commitment that they made, which essentially is to deliver the service that we're paying for. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah, I just have one question for you, if I may. Are they saying it's, in your understanding, it's blocked because of this pickup or the Subaru or whatever is over by the garbage can on the left, or do you know?
I do know.
You do? Okay.
Oh, I know exactly. That happens to be, well, it's not relevant. No, the street, I've lived here for 10 years. Mm-hmm. My neighbor across the street has lived here for 38 years. And he indicates to me, as I can see for myself, this has only happened in the last year and a half. Those two vehicles that you see parked there are parked there every day. They have been since at least 8 years ago, because one of them's disabled. The reasoning for this, the width of that particular street allows 3 vehicles. You can have parking on both sides, and the truck can still get in, and I know that because all of the other trucks have been doing it for the 10 years that I've been here. And there used to be parking on both sides, and that did not hinder pickup, again, for the 8.5 years prior to the current situation.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. We'll go with Councilmember.
What is the address of this cul-de-sac?
That's 12th Court Southwest.
12th Court. So 12th Court and the cross street is?
330.
English.
331st, I'm sorry.
Just
It's off of 331st.
Okay.
The city administration is thoroughly aware of this situation in that I've paid them almost $100 for copies of your documents and spent hours communicating with them, but to no avail. But I'm sure they have a record of all of the communication that has happened.
Okay. Okay.
It's
And-
its
and
time.
Councilmember Hunter, you had a question, then we'll move on.
So when Waste Management can't get their truck back there, what happens with your garbage? Is it not picked up?
It was not picked up, in this case, it differs. In this case, the driver did not pick up yard waste on the 23rd, I believe it was, and the 16th, or somewhere in that period, two times in a row. And my neighbors became alarmed, as did I, because we're in the height of, we're all gardeners. And you can imagine how much yard waste we have in the month of April. They do this periodically over the last year, but usually only once, and then they'll pick up. This is the first time in a while they've done twice and sequentially,
Okay.
which is what warranted my getting back involved, trying to get a resolution to this problem.
Did they charge you for that?
Of course.
Is staff is looking into this, and
I might add one thing to that cost question. In the autumn of 2023, when I spent an enormous amount of time, both the city and Waste Management acknowledged they were negligent. And they gave each of the 8 residences a $15 refund for the 3 days that we were able to do that. But that cost me about $100 in 20 hours to get that $15. But they did admit their negligence, and the city acknowledged their negligence, but determined specifically not to discipline them for the negligence, which by contract, those disciplinary actions would have been quite severe and quite costly. But the city determined they weren't going to do that, and instead they were going to put up a no parking sign in our cul-de-sac, even though it will accommodate 3 abreast vehicles in all portions of it.
you said no parking on garbage days or no parking all the time?
They put up a no parking on garbage days, but only for the circle,
Okay,
not for the area in which the vehicles are parked.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming, Eugene, and if we send this over to you, you can,
Yeah,
DJ,
staff's been working on this for a while. And yes, the cul-de-sac was signed no parking, and there was some pushback from some of the residents on the fact that it got signed.
yeah.
But yes, this has been an ongoing topic.
You think it's, you can get a report back to us and we can get it resolved if there's a resolution or no?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
Appreciate your time. Okay, we'll go to committee business, and Mr. Walsh, you have a motion?
I move that we take the next 4, the items out of their scheduled order in the following order: item H, item I, item G, and item F.
Yeah, and we'll,
And change them to, yeah, H, I, G, and F, put them in that order.
right, well, we're going to, when we get to them, we want to change the order.
Yeah.
We're going to
yeah.
start with
Or-
A.
Okay, so prior to agenda item F, prior to agenda, oh, that's where we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, at agenda item F, we're moved to make it in the order of item H, item I, item G, and item F.
Perfect, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now we'll go to item A, which is approval of the minutes. Is Linda okay?
She's gonna be going home.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There's some cough drops there for her if she needs some. Thank you, Keith. Okay, we're going to item A, approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the, let's see here.
April 7.
I move to approve the April 7 minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Now we'll lose item B, which is the 16th Avenue South Street Vacation Early Council Briefing. You have this right here.
Yeah, yeah, I do now.
And do you-
So we're doing B.
Yeah.
We're doing item B, 16th Avenue South Street Vacation Early Council Briefing. This, we've had a briefing on this about Federal Way High School, so. Okay,
Sorry.
no problem. You know, it's a computer, got to get it all set up right.
Come on. Good evening. Council President, Council Commission Chairman, esteemed council members. I am here to present for the,
That's a great intro, thank you.
I am Leonard Spadoni.
We'll move you up to item A next time.
Awesome. I'm here to present the partial vacation of South 16th Avenue that travels through the Federal Way High School. The question before us, should the council authorize the staff to proceed with review over the portion of 16th Avenue South Street vacation? This portion passes through the Federal Way High School parking lot. As you can see, it's mostly parking lot and a part of their alleyway, and there's a little triangle that's shaped by the tennis courts. Our options tonight for your consideration is authorize staff to begin reviewing of the partial 16th Avenue South Street vacation and direct staff to work with the petitioner to host a public briefing, open house, on the right-of-way vacation. This is the mayor's recommendation. Our other option is do not authorize staff to move forward and provide direction to staff. Questions?
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Can you explain what a right-of-way vacation is? Is that what it is?
It is,
Yeah.
sorry. Come on. Sorry, it is when we have vacated our public rights to a petitioner, in this case, the Federal Way High School.
So are we selling it to them?
We are actually looking into a property swap, but at this point, we haven't got into that far to see it. They are currently using it as their parking lot, and it's always been this alleyway. It is not something that we would look to open right away. But in the petition, they have another property that they're looking at exchanging for, or a monetary value. We haven't got into that far to see exactly whether it's a one-for-one or because every property has some pluses and minuses.
So we own that,
We own the right-of-way that goes through the high school. When they built the high school, it was an unopened right-of-way, similar to some of the southern properties that have unopened right-of-ways.
but they're maintaining it, and it's their responsibility if someone were to get hurt. There's buses that's where the buses come up and.
From what I
Yeah,
understand,
yes.
yes, but I'm sure if there was somebody that was hurt significantly, it never gets everybody out of it completely, but that would be something for the law and to distinguish.
Okay, and how long will it take before we resolve it?
Of who owns it, or who's liable?
Yeah,
Well, at this point, we're looking at turning it over to the Federal Way Public Schools, but we can find out how the liability is fairly quickly.
So usually it takes 18 to 24 months to get through this process.
Oh, that's a very long time.
24 months?
Why so long?
Because we have to go through all the utility companies that have franchises, and they have to agree to vacate it. Because under the franchise agreements that we have with all the different utilities, they have a right to be there as well. So we have to get their concurrence for each and every one of them before we can actually take action. So it's a long process.
Sounds way more complicated than it should be.
I agree.
Are the utilities actually there?
There's a water line that runs through and a sewer line. I spoke with Lake Haven, and they will either have to get an easement going through from Federal Way High School, or because it's a stub to some of their buildings when they crossed in on their development of the stadium.
So,
Okay.
Stadium's way down
yeah.
the bottom of the hill.
Be a lot easier if you could just do stuff on a handshake, just.
So,
But that put
Yeah.
people like Kent out of a job, so
Yes.
anyway, so.
So I do have a question. You mentioned a land swap or sell it. I mean, do we want a land swap? Wouldn't it be just cleaner to take the money and run?
So, yeah, I
Or
mean,
Or do they own something what we want?
So ultimately, tonight, I think the short answer is potentially. I mean, ultimately, tonight, what we're here for is there's two steps that are required to check in with council. The first is before the petition actually happens, which that occurred, as you pointed out, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Then they go and actually ask if there is interest from the adjoining property owners, which in this case, was themselves as well as a couple other property owners adjacent. And that there were enough signatures collected in favor of it. So now it comes back to staff to actually say, in short, council, is this something that we're agreeable to spending staff time and actually look into? So that's the point we're at now. We haven't actually done any work on this yet. So is there the potential for a swap? Absolutely. Staff hasn't done any analysis, though, to see if it makes any sense for either us or the school district. And we, frankly, working with the utilities is kind of the first step of it before we get to that question.
And I guess I have one last question. Do they pay for the cost this is gonna, are we're spending the money in anticipation, or is the school district gonna participate because they want this probably more than we want to get rid of it?
So they submit an application and we review it. There are fees associated with it. That being said, it takes more staff time than the fees cover. So it's, it is, a process. But the participation is they do a lot of the legwork with the appraisals, utilities, getting the survey, title reports, et cetera, and then they submit that for review. So it's very similar to any private development, with the exception of we're trading property or selling property, as the case may be. But the process itself is very, very similar to that, where they prepare plans, submit applications, and then staff reviews it, provides comments, and there's a back and forth. So in that regards, yes, they are participating.
Yeah, but, my last question is, other than that they would like to, I'm assuming, own this from the last time we had it, because it's their parking lot, why do we, if they're not gonna pay for it, why are we even wasting our time? Our staff time, we have budgets, and we have a lot of things, and what's the compelling reason why we would even
So
go
by
forward?
statute, they will have to pay for it
No.
to purchase it.
The purchase, I understand. I'm talking the staff time and the time it's gonna take to go through this 24-month period, what's the compelling reason to do that?
So there's a couple. I first and foremost, as Leonard pointed out, it is their parking lot. If we were to purely take an administrative perspective of it, we would say, it's public right of way. If something were to happen, we would be the named party initially, and we would probably ask to have the school district brought in, but it is city controlled property right there today. So at an administrative level, one approach would be to go and prohibit future use of it by the school district. Obviously, that's not exactly a good partnership. That's not something we're advising to be done, but from an administrative perspective, it is one road. This cleans that conversation up. Obviously, it's been used by the school district for a very long time. I don't think anyone would argue that. It was supposed to be cleaned up when the high school was rebuilt, and that didn't happen. So that's why they're here today, and it's advancing.
And I think another benefit to the city that Councilmember Honda pointed out is the fact that when this is no longer city property, there is no argument that the city would be liable for any accident that occurs on the premises.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Do I have a motion, Mr. Walsh?
Yes. I move to forward option 1 to the May 20, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And now we'll move on to item C, the 2025 pedestrian crossing. Mr. Cole.
Good evening, Chair, council members. I am here today to present authorization to award the 2025 pedestrian crossing RRFBs to you. Background for this, April 23rd, we received 6 bids for this project. The lowest responsive bidder was FTS Excavation. This project involves 2 sites, one just south of here on First Avenue, behind the post office auxiliary building there. The other one is just south of Highway 18 on Weyerhaeuser Way. Available fundings from the different sources come in about $568,000. And estimated expenditures with the 10% contingency and staff time is $560,400. We present options 1 and option 2 to you this evening. Mayor recommends option number 1. And as always, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Walsh?
So what is involved with creating the pedestrian crossing?
Yeah, the location on First Avenue, we will have mast arms up over First Avenue from each shoulder that will include flashing. The RRFBs are rapid flashing beacons.
Kind of like
push
what's up
button.
on 320th at a few places?
Yeah, or just over here next to City Hall.
Okay.
But these will be mounted up overhead over the lanes, as well as luminaires, additional luminaires to light up the crossing. Advanced warning signs and such. The location over on Weyerhaeuser will be much more like you see out here, where it's just a pole mounted on the side, where it's the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, push button for cross.
Okay. So it sounds like it's more economical on Weyerhaeuser Way than what it'll be here on First.
Yeah, that's definitely the bulk of the cost is on First.
So why can't First be done that way also?
Volume of traffic, lane widths. There'll also be a pedestrian refuge island at both locations, so it'll split the two. Out here on First, 2 lanes each way, I believe, on First. So definitely over on Weyerhaeuser, it's just 1 lane.
Single, yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay. All right, gotcha.
yeah.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, if you could go back to the budget real quick.
Yeah, of course.
And my question is actually not about the budget, but I had a resident recently send me to have a conversation with me, and we get these beautiful expenditures that show the construction cost, contingency, then construction engineering, and it kind of breaks it out. But when we get the actual approval, like it's done, and we have a savings, it's a 1 line item. And one of the recommendations they asked for is if we could have the same layout to see where the savings are, the overcosts is sometimes. So there's nothing, you just happen to have a project that worked out for my comments there, but that was something I'd like to see if that was possible, maybe we could look at in the future.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Go for it.
So when it gets finalized, when it comes to us, you're asking that construction costs instead of 447,637, maybe it's 443,637, and contingency is 10% less, and
Yeah.
staff engineering, so you can see exactly where the savings were?
Yes.
Does that make sense, EJ?
Makes sense. Let me double check with finance and make sure
Okay.
we can do that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, if we can, it's
Instead
easy,
of getting
but let me double check.
Yeah, because we've had a couple like $100,000 under. I'm like, well, where's that savings? I'm happy, nothing wrong with that, but I just like to see where the savings was on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Walsh, do we have a
All
motion?
right. I move to forward the proposed award of the 2025 pedestrian crossing RFBs project to the May 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we'll go to item D, which is the 2025 speed limit ordinance amendment. Yeah.
Good evening, and here to present a proposal to modify some speed limits. Let's see, where am I? Get this out of the way. There we go. All right. So, policy question is, should the council approve an ordinance to adopt the proposed speed limit changes in this ordinance? So, city council has the authority to determine all speed limits in the city except for on state highways. And WashDOT had requested a speed limit reduction for both the South 288th Street Road Diet Project and the Poverty Bay multi-use projects. And that's because they were the funders. And proposed that those be reduced to 30. Currently, all streets that aren't explicitly defined in code default to the state maximum for residential streets of 25 miles per hour. Particularly on commercially zoned streets, that the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is regularly violated. And so we're proposing to increase those to 30 miles per hour. When we looked at all the different analyses, found that adopting the reduced speed limits as requested by WashDOT do not provide any additional risk to the city. And because they help fund those projects, we would like to honor that request and find them reasonable. Particularly with 288th Road Diet, we reduced the lane widths to help encourage lower speeds on that. And then, as I mentioned, most of the streets that are in commercial zones have much higher design speeds, which tends to make drivers want to go faster than what the posted speed limit is. So, and that doesn't necessarily reduce safety in that if you're improving the driver's perception of what the speed limit is versus how comfortable they feel, they're more likely to treat speed limits with greater respect and honor them. So, quick map showing where the speed limits would be decreased from 35 to 30 and where they would be increased from 25 to 30. And these maps are in your packet.
Oh, good.
So, options considered, one is to improve the ordinance amending the Federal Way Revised Code, or option two, do not approve it and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is option one.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, the questions I have is an understanding. So they want us to reduce the speeds. What was their reasoning for reducing the speeds, the two that are yellow?
So, in both cases, we were adding bicycle facilities, and so is intended to provide a bit more buffer between the bicyclist and pedestrian travel speeds to the vehicular speeds. So on 288th, we provided narrower lanes and a narrow buffer between the vehicle lanes and the bike lanes, which also, it improves bicyclist and pedestrian feelings of comfort by providing that separation and the lower speeds. Same thing on 16th Avenue South. We're providing the multi-use path on the west side and also introducing some traffic calming on 16th, so to help manage those speeds as well.
So pretty much people and bikes on the roads more, so they want us to reduce the speeds for them.
Right.
Okay. And then the other one is the increasing. That's an interesting one. They want to increase from 25 to 30. what was the, excuse me, from, I think, 35, 30 to...
25 up to
30.
30.
Yeah. What was the, those just seemed to like randomly placed. What was the?
So
logic?
these are all commercially zoned areas that don't have any residences right in front of them. So the default speed limit is based on assumption of residential land use.
Okay.
And with commercial land use, you typically have a lot less driveways and a lot less pedestrian use. You don't have kids playing in the street, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. All right, interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So the difference between going 30 and going 25 if someone were to be injured by a vehicle, is that significant?
So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but yeah, if you were hit at 30 as opposed to 25, potentially the collision would be more severe.
So in these areas that are increasing, do they have any history of accidents occurring?
So without doing a detailed analysis, I can't say for sure, but in general, what we see is most of the drivers are already going at least 30. So you're not really going to change safety assuming that drivers don't adapt to the higher speed limit and go even faster, which is a common perception, but typically it doesn't really work out that way. For instance, when we increased the speed limit on 356th west of First, we increased it from 35 to 40, and speeds went up about 1 mile an hour. So, because it was just, they were going like 42 before, and then afterwards they were going 43. So all we did was make it appear, we reduced the number of non-compliant drivers. We actually reduced the collision rate on 356 when we did that. So as we're trying to better align the posted speed limits with drivers' perception without creating an unsafe condition.
And none of these areas are residential, they're all business?
These are all commercial zone, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, so they're currently posted at 25
That's
now
correct.
then? Okay. So, so it'll be, the posting will just change from 25 to 30 then?
Right.
All right. Well, what is I think that's a great idea. My only question is what's the cost of the city to
So
to
we
change
had that
the-
in, I think it was about $6,000 to swap the signs out,
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Okay,
which we can absorb in our operating budget.
okay, sounds good.
So I have a question on the yellow ones where you want to take it down.
Yes.
So I understand the one on 16th, that's where we put the new bike trail along that hill right there, right?
Yep.
And there's a little separation. But 288th, I know we're trying to slow it down or do some things, but that's a major arterial from Pack Highway to, going that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're skinnying it down, and now we're taking a major arterial and taking it, and maybe it's not a lot, from what, 30 to 25?
We're going from 35 to 30.
35 to 30. I don't know. It just seems that we're gonna, and what are we gonna do to enforce it? I mean, are we gonna have speed cameras there, or what are we really gonna do?
Okay, so first off, just the perception of the narrower lanes will help reduce speeds. Secondly, because we're going from 4 lanes to 3, there won't be any passing opportunities. So basically, the lowest common denominator in terms of speeds will control the speeds. So, it doesn't take too many people in that type of environment, especially given the volumes out there, that most people will end up having to go slower whether they want to or not,
And when does this take effect?
shortly after it's adopted.
Okay, but the construction and all that, when's that all gonna happen?
Okay, so we've
What's the
already constructed east of Military. So, and then the west of Military was recently awarded and will start construction this summer.
Okay. I don't know, it just seems like, I drive that a lot, and it seems like it's a busy area, for sure.
It is busy, yes.
Okay.
It's about 15,000 cars a day, which is just about where we want it to be to have the road diet.
Yeah. Are we gonna put emphasis there so people actually get a,
I would expect.
warning or
Yeah,
something?
police will probably be out there doing some spot enforcement to, educate folks primarily initially, and then after that, it's a matter of when they're available to do that.
And then lastly, when they cross into King County, what's the speed there? You go by that apartment and you go by the school and all that? I mean, the school has.
Right.
I mean,
Right, so that, theirs is still 35 now. And they have done a similar road diet, but they don't have as narrow lanes because they don't have the buffer between the vehicle lane and the bike lanes. So their lanes are wider.
so basically, we're going from the speed over there when they're coming from Thomas Jefferson, under the freeway, they're going faster, and then we're slowing them down.
Correct.
We're making a funnel, basically,
A little bit.
a little bit, okay. Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, just real quick, how much, do you happen to know what the grant amount was?
So for phase 1 of 288,
Yes.
the state contributed 1 million towards that project.
Okay.
And then the Transportation Improvement Board, I think that was about 2.5, 3 million, if I recall correctly, which was the entire length of the project. Similarly, on 16th Avenue, I believe WashDOT's contribution was about $1 million for that segment.
Okay. So roughly 4 mil for one and about 1 million for the other one, so about
Yeah.
5 million total?
That sounds about right.
Councilmember Walsh, do you have another question or a motion?
No motion.
Okay.
All right, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on May 20th, 2025.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to our next item, which is, item E, setting a public hearing for the 2026-2031 Transportation Improvement Program.
Yes, so this is our annual passing a resolution to set the public hearing date for adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program. So we're proposing that to be on June 17th, as required by state law. And so option 1 is approve the proposed resolution, or 2, do not, and provide direction to staff.
I don't see any blue lights. Do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed resolution to the May 20th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're going to go to our next item, which is
I think still item F, it's after.
item F.
Item H, I believe.
Yeah, now we're, yeah, where are we at now? We did E, now we're on F?
Item
H.
H, yeah, this is where we did our,
housing code amendments.
we did our spaghetti soup of moving it around. So we're going
Correct.
with item H, ordinance Title 18, Middle Housing Code Amendments. There we go. And then we go to I, and then to G, and then to F.
We will figure it out one way or another.
One
of us.
Last time you were here, you grouped them all together, so it's, we're gonna make some spaghetti. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Committee Chair Dovey and council members. My name is Holly Bozak, and I will be presenting a couple of items tonight. The Title 18 amendments for middle housing related to House Bill 1110 will be first, followed by the amendments to Title 19 related to middle housing. And just to kind of give you a preface of what's going on tonight and why we asked to move some things around on the agenda, items F through I are all related to one another, and there is a more logical series of presenting them so they flow together and make more sense. So hopefully, the goal is here to move item H up so that they go in a more sequential order. So with that, we will get started. The policy question for the amendments to Title 18: should the City Council adopt the proposed text amendments to Federal Way Revised Code Title 18 relating to middle housing? Middle housing is defined as buildings that are compatible in scale, form, and character with single-family houses and contain 2 or more attached or clustered homes. Back in 2023, the legislature was busy at work telling cities what they need to change to increase densities and create more housing. House Bill 1110 was one of those bills. And the focus of the bill is that cities need to require 4 to 6 units on lots zoned predominantly residential. We had discussed in previous discussions with LUTC that the typologies that we would choose would be duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhouses, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. To give some examples, here we have depictions of duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhouses, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. And to go over the specific amendments, Title 18, which is our subdivision code, has resources in it currently for subdividing property, which is through the short subdivision process and through condominium application process. Changes to the code are we will be deleting alley access encouraged for 0 lot line townhomes, as well as any references to 5 lots and change that to 6 lots. And language related to cottage housing and 0 lot line townhouse development. The reason that we are deleting references to 0 lot line townhouse and cottage housing development standards is because that will now be included under the middle housing standards that we are writing into Title 19. Additionally, we have added language regarding unit lot subdivisions, which we will get into more detail on later. And that will be tied to the RM zone and the rezone that we will also be talking more about later. To give you a high-level overview of what unit lot subdivisions are, it's another process utilized like short plat process. It's actually done through the short plat process, and it allows ownership of the land underneath a unit rather than when you do a condominium project, whereas you just own the actual unit rather than the land and the unit. In unit lot subdivisions, individual lots do not need to conform to the dimensional standards or development standards for the zone. However, the parent lot, which is the lot that the unit lots are inside of, does have to comply with those standards. Options for consideration: adopt the proposed ordinance as drafted, do not adopt the proposed ordinance, and provide direction to staff.
Okay.
Recommendation? Nope, sorry, just 1 or 2 more slides and then we're there. Recommendation by the Planning Commission was to approve, and the mayor's recommendation is to adopt as proposed. All right. Before we go to Title 19 amendments, I will take any questions on the subdivision portion of the amendments.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, just the primary parcel, whatever it is, does that count as one of the 6, or is it the primary and then there's 6 on top of that?
So we'll go into the actual standards for unit lot subdivision in Title 19 amendments. For the subdivision process, the unit lot subdivision process, it is a total of 6. So you can have a single family home along with 5 middle housing units, or you can have 6 middle housing units, single family home, and an ADU plus 4 middle housing units, any combination of 6, but it's a 6 total.
Parent lot does not count.
Does not, okay, thank you.
So, and I have 2 questions. If the covenants of the neighborhood, wherever this is, forbid you doing that, then they would stand over and above this
That's
amendment.
correct.
If they were pre-existing,
If they were
Yes.
pre-existing.
correct. If they were legally adopted and legally enforceable at the time that House Bill 1110 was adopted.
Yeah, so example, an old neighborhood like Twin Lakes, who probably has covenants, although somebody may want to do this, probably will not be able to.
That's correct.
Okay. And then if somebody had a raw piece of land that they wanted to put, they have a house and they wanted to put 4 additional units on it, this code amendment would probably make it simpler than it was in the old days, correct? I mean,
If they choose to go through the unit lot subdivision process, yes, it'll make it easier for them. They could still do a short plat as long as they have
Right.
enough land to comply with
right.
the short plat
But
process.
if they, had a vision, they had a vision to put 5 houses on a piece of property they had, and for whatever reason, they couldn't because of the way the building codes were and the rules, this probably makes it easier some way, potentially?
Potentially. And
I mean, there's
again, as
still-
we get into Title 19, I'll go over a little bit more what those kind of bookends are on
Sure.
when you can and cannot
Okay.
Yeah,
follow this process.
I think to Holly's point, that specific question will be answered in more detail with the Title 19 presentation, which is next. But the short answer is yes, it will be easier to do that.
Okay. So do we need to, are we ready to pass a motion on this? I mean, to move it forward? That's what we,
So
That's where
generally,
we're at right
generally, we'd act on each one of these items. If the chair and members of the committee want to wait until they've heard all 4 of the items and the presentations on all 4 to pass each one, that's also an option.
we'll just pass them one at a time. So,
I move to forward the proposed ordinance the first reading on May 20th, 2025.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Because if we waited, we'd get really confused. So let's go to the next one.
I was about to jump in there and say, I don't know that I would suggest
We'd
that.
say, no, let's not do anything. Let's keep it the old way. Go ahead.
All right, moving on to the amendments for Title 19 tied to middle housing. We'll go into a little
And
bit.
sorry, just to butt in for a second, this is item I.
Yes, item I. Okay, yeah, because we went H, I, G, and F.
Thank you.
Item I.
I apologize, jumped the gun. So a policy question, might sound a little bit familiar. Should the city council adopt the proposed text amendments to Federal Way Revised Code Title 19 relating to middle housing? So background on this is the city cannot require stricter standards or review process for middle housing proposals than that which is required for single-family residences. There's also limitations on required parking and a limit on how many and if you can do middle housing related to critical areas that may be present on site, wells, and septic systems. And to give you a little bit more background in terms of timeline, the state has said that cities have until the end of June to adopt their own amendments that relate to middle housing. Otherwise, a state model code will go into effect on July 1st. Some of the changes that we have made, we've added new definitions and amended some of the definitions to comply with House Bill 1110 and address middle housing. We've also updated the use zone charts to include middle housing and related development standards. So middle housing is allowed in residential, single-family, and suburban estate zones. As discussed with LUTC in the past, we have chosen the typologies to be duplex, triplex, fourplexes, townhouses, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. These units will have a 5-foot setback from property lines, and the number of parking spaces required will be dependent on a number of things, but it will be between 0 and 2. The 0, as you may recall, has to do with proximity to transit. So if it is near a rapid transit line or light rail, we cannot require parking.
Isn't that within a half mile or something
Half
like
mile,
that?
yes.
Because when you say that, we should always say how far away it is.
And I believe it's also a half-mile walk shed,
Yes, that's correct.
which is a little bit different from as the crow flies. That's a half-mile walking distance, which could, have angles and twists and turns and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So the decision in LUTC, or the policy guidance, I will say, during that discussion in December, was that we would allow 6 units across the board in these zones. And the basis for that decision primarily, if memory serves me correctly, was that we have to allow 6 units if a developer says that they're going to do 2 affordable units, and if it's within that half mile of mass transit. So the conversation at that time was, might as well just do 6 across the board, then we don't have to make the administrative side of it more complicated than necessary. So just wanted to give a little bit of background there from that conversation. December was a while ago now. So the maximum number of units per lot will be a maximum of 6, and you can have any combination, including up to 2 ADUs and, of course, a single-family home. So we have some examples down at the bottom of the screen there.
Can you move the bar, Holly?
I think so. There we go. So down at the bottom of the screen, we will talk about some of these a little bit more when you have the unit lot subdivision presentation later as well, but you can see some of those, specifically in the middle, we have just middle housing units. And then on each of the ends, we have one with a single-family house and 3 middle housing units, and then a duplex and an ADU. So again, the chosen typologies that were discussed: duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. Any combination of those 6, along with ADUs and single-family housing, may be used. Here's a breakdown of some, this is not a holistic breakdown, but here's an example of what you may do with some depictions that your 5-year-old nephew probably could have put together for you.
And isn't it, you only can do 5 if you don't have the discounted rent ones?
The way that we took the guidance from the LUTC conversation in December is you can do 6.
Right,
So
but-
6 across, so
but-
you don't have to, we didn't incorporate affordable housing into it. So a developer can choose to do affordable housing if they would like to, but we did not make that mandatory for the 6 units.
Okay.
Did that make sense, Chair? So it's 6
It's
regardless?
6, yeah, but they don't have to have a reduced rent one.
Correct. There's no
Okay.
tie whatsoever to
Thought
affordability.
I heard that at the very beginning, but go, yeah. Thank you.
Sure. So just to give a high-level overview of the changes made to Title 19, or the proposed changes to Title 19, provisions have been updated to ensure appropriate applicability between single-family development and middle housing. So as I noted earlier in my presentation, we cannot make it stricter when we're looking at middle housing proposals than what we would for a single-family residence. And also, we clarified that middle housing is exempt from design guidelines. We removed attached dwelling units and 0 lot line townhouses as uses in the single-family RS zone, and that is because they will be covered under the middle housing standards, so we did not want duplicative standards throughout the code. And we removed distinct standards pertaining to cottage housing for the same reason. We updated attached and stacked housing in middle-family residential zones to allow for higher density to be compliant with the requirements of House Bill 1110. And we removed the differing RM zones and created one RM zone, which you will also hear more about later in the rezone discussion. And we also made minor adjustments to existing allowed uses for building heights due to that change from 3,600, 2,400, and 1,800 RM to one RM zone. So now the building heights will be consistent in the RM zone as well. And again, we removed references to single-family, small lot detached development and 0 lot line townhouses, again, to not have duplicative standards in the code. And that summarizes the code amendments for Title 19. And the process so far has been, we went to Planning Commission with a briefing in November. We discussed policy direction with LUTC in December, made a SEPA determination in February. We held the public hearing at Planning Commission last month, and we are here with you tonight and hopefully going to council at the end of the month. And with that, I will take questions.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, my simple one is, I just want to make sure this ordinance we're talking about is just describing the types of middle housing that are now going to be available to residents to build or developers, correct?
So the amendments now have a process with the amendments to Title 18, and Title 19 kind of guides you with the development standards and outlines what you're allowed to do.
So I want to ask questions, but I don't know where they really fit sometimes because we go over different things. So if we had I'm going to ask a question, you can tell me if it's another demo you guys are going to give. But if we had a piece of property that was 5 acres and they wanted to do a subdivision or whatever the terminology, a short plot, and it was 1 acre apiece, could they then do another subdivision to make those into the 6 that we were talking about, a parent lot, and then the unit lots underneath of that?
Good question. That is a question that will most likely be addressed in the unit lot subdivision presentation. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
You can
And
do
that
that.
was which one?
So with
G?
clarifying question with your short answer, yes. So 5 acres divided into 5 means you could have 30 on that.
That's correct.
We don't have to wait the 4 or 5 years, you could do it all at one time.
You
right?
can, yeah, so the way the code's been written, you can do both a classic short plat or a long plat for that matter. You can do a classic plat along with a unit lot subdivision simultaneously.
And would that eliminate a lot of the road work?
It will not affect substantively what is required in terms of road work and other requirements. It simply makes it a one-step dance as opposed to a two-step dance.
Councilman McDaniel, you've got the floor still, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And I just want to make sure that was going to be what we talk about under G then?
Sorry, my computer just timed out. If G is the unit lot subdivision ordinance, then the answer is yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So if somebody wanted to put 30 units on what we were just speaking about, can it be one owner, one property owner, or does it, because the state had talked about limiting how many property owners could be?
There's no legal limitation on the number of property owners. So in that example, you could have one person own all 36 of those unit lots and rent them out or lease them out. Or you could have that same person sell half of them to their brother, or you could have 36 different owners. All of those are options.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, and so in that scenario, you have this 5, it's broken up into, 36 units. If it's within a half mile of mass transit, we could not require any parking.
That's correct.
So
That
potentially
doesn't,
for,
yeah, and to be clear, that just means that the city cannot require the developer to provide the parking. The developer could still provide the
Right,
parking if they
right.
wanted to.
Yeah,
And then the second yes, practically, it's unlikely that there'll be 0 parking lots or parking spaces in that development. The second thing is, we're just talking about off-street parking. So we're talking about parking on the private property. This doesn't affect street parking. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the 0 to 2.
But with this, potentially, there's going to be even if, developers will surely do some parking, but it's potential for major challenges with on-street.
The market will dictate what the developers will decide to do when it comes to parking. If, they're seeing that there's not buyers for units that don't have parking available, even though the city can't require it, they're still going to include
Yeah,
parking.
okay, all righty.
So can I ask a hypothetical question?
Sure.
Where that bike trail is that we just reduced the parking on the yellow just a few minutes ago.
288.
There's a long piece of
Oh,
property
16.
there that's probably, I don't know, it's not 5 acres, but it's pretty big, that's undeveloped on a hillside. If whoever owns that, and I don't know who owns it, they could come in and say, hey, I want to divide this short platted into 5 lots and put 30-somethings there, and we can't have parking with this new law. They could park along that bike trail that we just reduced the road down to 25 miles. That kind of,
Keep in mind
is that a
that
scenario?
it is theoretically a scenario. However, keep in mind that there are still provisions for critical areas, wells and septic. So you can't have, 6 middle housing units on every single lot just based on the topography of
No,
Federal Way
okay.
and based on what's already out there in terms of septic system
Got it.
wells.
Okay.
So that piece of property that you're referring to likely has some slopes on
Yeah,
it
it's
that
got
may
some slopes and
impact-
different things. I was just thinking about the apartments on the other side, because that's right next to transit. You could walk across the street, it's less
Sorry.
than a half a mile.
Is that even zoned residential? I'm pretty sure that's a commercially zoned property next to 99.
Okay.
In which case, the answer is, none of that is possible
I
because
was
it's
just asking.
commercially zoned property.
That was the one that came to mind. I was just,
Yeah, pretend that were zoned residential.
if it was zoned residential, I don't know what it's zoned. I'm just,
If it were zoned residential, yes, that is indeed a concern. yeah.
and then when they change it,
So the transit's not there until 2035, so
well, there's a rapid bus across the street.
it's not rapid ride.
Oh, that's not rapid ride? Oh, I thought it was. Okay.
Yes, it is.
I think this is up north on 99, yeah.
Yeah,
So all of,
yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Okay, Councilmember Walsh,
Now what was I going to ask after?
you ready to make a motion, or, no?
you
I-
have
I-
another
I did have one more question.
theoretical question?
Okay, so, yeah, and we've kind of asked this before, and you haven't had an answer, but I'd like just kind of a guesstimate from somebody, is considering the HOAs, the septic, the everything like that, just roughly, and I know that you can't give anything definitive, what percentage of the city do you think that this would actually be applicable for?
Well, we can look at the GIS layers that show where critical areas are present throughout the city. However, with sewers and wells, it's a lot more complicated, and I know I'm not going to give you the answer you're looking for here, so I apologize. However, I did try to find as much information as I could on where the sewer tie-ins are available currently. And Lake Haven is actually not providing updated maps until, well, they're working on it currently with their comprehensive plan map updates. So I don't have much additional info from the last time you asked that question, which is, there is a large portion of homes that have wells and septic systems in Federal Way. As you know, we have one of the largest amount in King County. So none of those parcels would be able to do middle housing unless they somehow are able to have King County sign off on an improvement to their septic system, or they would have to tie into sewer.
So my back of the napkin guess was a third, and I believe I translated Keith's back of the napkin guess just now to 20%. So there's two guesses for you.
Okay.
And my
I mean,
guess
that-
would have
that-
also
that-
been about a
That gives
third,
us
so.
something, anyway, okay, yeah, so,
Somewhere between 20 and 30%.
okay.
So one more question. You talk about sewers. I mean, if you don't have sewers, and the septics are going to dictate how much you can develop, which is going to keep it down. But many years ago in Portland, they came through and the city came through and mandated sewers be put into all the residential. And I remember, it was a new homeowner in Portland, I was like shocked at the, whatever it was, $7,000 bill or whatever. If the city ever wanted to have sewers in these places, can we not dictate, but can we go to Lake Haven and say, we would like you to do this? Or is that Lake Haven's decision? Who makes the decision on making our city sewers? I mean,
That's absolutely a decision that we could make. Back when we were in the many discussions regarding the comprehensive plan periodic update last year, there was consideration for putting in very strong language in the comprehensive plan that would have required all new development and or even existing development in certain circumstances to connect to sewer. I know some of that language got in, but not all of it. But to answer your question, we could mandate that if that was the policy desire.
well, back in the days at Portland, it wasn't for development, it was just that every house had to hook up. You didn't have a choice. And so then, I mean, if you ever went to that, then that would make all these properties to 20 to 30% or even more would then all fit into this. I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm just asking that question.
I'll just say in my experience working in King County jurisdictions, having a new house built on a property that has a septic system is incredibly difficult. Usually getting approval from the county is...
It's not gonna happen.
It's very challenging.
Yeah.
So it ties people's hands in a lot of cases and sometimes forces them to look for another place to build.
Yeah, okay. Okay, no more blue lights, do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on May 20, 2025.
Second that, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're moving to item G. We went HI, now we're going to G, which is unit lot subdivision code amendments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then we're going to go to F.
What page is G? Page numbers on
Okay, the much anticipated Unilot Subdivisions Code Amendments. Good evening, Chair and Council Committee members and council members. I'm Stacy Welsh, Principal Planner. Let's get into these code amendments. You have some great questions, so hopefully we'll cover them, but please feel free to ask as well.
No, yeah, that only happened on the first one. Okay, go right ahead.
So the question before you is, should the council adopt the proposed text amendments to the city's subdivision code related to unit lot subdivisions? So for some background on this one, this was also the legislature. They passed Senate Bill 5258 in 2023, and this requires all cities to include in their short plat regulations procedures for unit lot subdivisions, or sometimes you'll see this on the slides as ULS, just for short, and allowing division of what is known as a parent lot into separately owned unit lots. So we've got an example here, and the outer rectangle is the parent lot, and A, B, and C that are shown here are the unit lots. And then there's a common tract held in common ownership for parking and access. So this is kind of a basic layout of what this might look like. These are created through the subdivision process, and they're a type of residential development where the residents own their unit and the land beneath it, and this is an alternative to a condominium, in that case where you own the unit individually and the remainder is under common ownership by an HOA. Within a unit lot subdivision, the individual unit lots do not need to meet the minimum lot size requirements for the zone, as long as the parent lot does. So that's different. Traditionally, anytime you subdivide property, all of the lots need to meet the lot size for the zone. And this is different. We've got another example here of a 4-unit or 4-townhome unit project. Again, that outer rectangle is that parent lot, and there's 4 attached units, all on their own individual lots. Again, a common access tract there on the right. In terms of the amendments themselves, we'll be adding new definitions for terms like parent lot and unit lot subdivision, and updating some other definitions to incorporate this into the code. Additional amendments are needed to update a density section, and just to reiterate, that parent lot needs to meet that minimum lot size, but those individual unit lots do not. The main component of the amendments is a brand-new chapter in the subdivision code containing review criteria and procedures for unit lot subdivisions, and this would be used to divide parent lots with middle housing, attached dwelling units, detached dwelling units, and accessory dwelling units or ADUs, wherever those are permitted. And depending on the number of lots, it's either going to be a short subdivision, and that's going to be 9 lots or less, or it would be a full subdivision or a preliminary plat for 10 or more lots. We'd like our examples, so here's additional drawings. You've seen some of these before, but we'll go over them again. It's just good to have different examples of how this might play out. So we'll go upper left first. We got a single-family residence up front with a triplex in the back, all 4 units on their own lots. Over on the right, upper right, we've got 6 cottage housing units. Again, some common areas, but each unit on its own. Lower right, we've got a single-family residence up front with a duplex in the back, a common area on the side. And then that lower left, a little unique, we've got a duplex with an accessory dwelling unit. So again, all units on their own lots, kind of the same construct with that outer rectangle being that parent lot. All of the units on their own with some common areas. Just some examples. In terms of ownership options, we'll go over all 3 of these because with these code amendments, all of these will become possible. So we'll take a scenario where you have a piece of property. On it, you have a single-family residence, a duplex, and an accessory dwelling unit. Under option 1, you can have all of those units on the one lot with one lot owner. Or option 2, you can have all of the units on one lot with condominium ownership, where all of those units can be owned independently, but they'll have to establish an HOA to own that underlying lot. I think you see where this is going. With option 3, under unit lot subdivision ownership, all of the units would be on their own lots, and then those common areas, as we saw in some of those pictures, owned by all of the lots in common or by an HOA. So 3 different scenarios, all possible now with these amendments. In terms of the adoption process, the council, or LUTC, had a briefing in December on unit lot subdivisions. City staff issued an environmental policy, or a SEPA determination, for these amendments in March. The Planning Commission held a public hearing in April, and at that meeting, there were no public comments received. Tonight, we're before the committee, and next up will be full council in May and June. Anytime we look to change the subdivision code, we need to ensure, and have done so, that the amendments are consistent with the comprehensive plan. They bear a substantial relationship with the public health, safety, and welfare, and that they are in the best interest of the residents of the city. Your policy options are to adopt the proposed ordinance for the amendments to Title 18, or do not adopt and provide direction to staff. The Planning Commission recommended approval, and the mayor's recommendation is option 1, to approve. Any questions?
Councilmember McDaniel? Oh, wait, I guess it wasn't a blue light. I don't see any blue lights. Do I have a motion?
I moved forward. I moved it forward with the proposed ordinance, the first reading on May 20th, 2025.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to item F, ordinance to the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Legislative Rezone.
Okay, we'll get into the final one of these intricately linked items. So this one may be a bit challenging, but now we've set the table, and hopefully it'll make sense, but feel free to ask questions. So the council policy question is, should the council adopt the 2025 comprehensive plan amendments and legislative rezone? So for some background, by state law, the city can review comprehensive plan amendments annually. And those amendments are either city-initiated or privately initiated. Again, that would be by a property owner. This year, they are city-initiated text amendments, and they're regarding that multifamily residential, or RM zone. The middle housing code amendments that you heard about earlier, they include some adjustment to that multifamily zone residential density. So currently, as you heard, we have 3 multifamily zones, and they all have a number tied to them: the 36, 24, and the 1800. And those numbers relate to the amount of lot area that you need per dwelling unit. It's a way to establish a density standard. With those code amendments for middle housing, those numbers aren't going to make sense anymore. So we just need to remove them wherever they are. And so they currently, they live in the comp plan in a couple places, and we just need to strike that out. So they're really minor text amendments. So we've talked a bit about the comp plan. We're going to switch gears and talk about rezones. So for some background on this one, there are 2 kinds of rezones. There's quasi-judicial and there's legislative. Before you tonight is the legislative rezone, and those are initiated by the city, and they include a large number of properties that are similarly affected by the action. Those same middle housing code amendments looking to make those residential density adjustments. Here's another place where we have the 3600, the 2400, and the 1800. And so while this is technically a rezone, properties are zoned multifamily now, and they would continue to be zoned multifamily just without the number tied to them. They would simply be RM, or multifamily residential. So we're essentially combining 3 zones into 1. Here's a look at the zoning map. The multifamily zone used to have 3 different orange colors to it, and now it would just have sort of that one creamsicle color, if you will. Here we're just kind of pointing out a number of locations in the city where we have multifamily residential zone property. As you can see, it's all over the place. There's no one area where it is. It's north, south, east, and west. So this is just to give you a basic high-level feel of where all of this is. Again, we're not looking to change zoning anywhere. It's just a minor technicality, if you will, in terms of a rezone. So let's recap. We've given you a lot of information. In terms of the comp plan text amendments, we're just removing some numbers, and the rezone is taking 3 zones into 1. In terms of the adoption process, we did the SEPA determination in March. We're with the committee tonight. Next up would be a public hearing before the full council on May 20th, followed by a meeting on June 3rd. Anytime we look to change the comp plan, we need to verify the following, and we have done so. The proposed amendments bear a substantial relationship to the public health, safety, and welfare. They are in the best interest of the residents of the city. They're consistent with state law, as well as the portions of the comprehensive plan that are not affected by the amendments. Similarly, with the legislative rezone, we need to review and affirm, and have done so, that the rezone is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as well as bearing a substantial relationship to the public health, safety, or welfare, and is in the best interest of the residents of the city. Your policy options are to adopt the proposed ordinance for the comprehensive plan amendments and the legislative rezone, or do not adopt and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, approve the proposed ordinance. Question?
Councilmember McDaniel?
I just verifying, got it in clear. So we took 3 zones and just combining it down to 1 zone. That's all we're doing, right?
That's the idea.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
So along that question, we've had 3 different lot sizes basically in those zones, correct? 18, 24, and 36. So now we're making it 1. What do we make it, 1,800?
1150.
1150, so you're even going below, how come that wasn't in there? No, on the highlight. I should have read it better, huh? So we're going to 1150. So are we gonna have a lot of people walking in here who we've said, no, you can't make houses and you gotta stay in an apartment, and we changing that rule, or is it, what's happening?
We've let everyone that has this zoning designation know that this change is happening. And so you've got a public hearing scheduled on the 20th. Otherwise, although we haven't received any negative feedback about it, it creates options for people, not requirements.
Well, you're not gonna get anybody negative on it, they're gonna love it, I would think. But I'm just thinking back on time here, we had a gentleman come in on the corner of First Avenue and 312 and wanted to change zoning.
Yeah.
So we said no, as I remember. We said, no, you've already got zoned, so what's gonna happen there?
Nothing will happen in those situations. So the specific time you're referencing, if my memory is correct, it was a proposed change from, I believe it was either office park or another commercial designation to a multifamily
Well,
designation.
I think it is it's multifamily or houses. and the-
Currently?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's right across from that 7-Eleven. You know
I-
what I'm
I
talking
don't-
about? What's that?
The old Valley's property,
Which one?
the one on First?
No, you come
talking
down, is it not 312, it's 308th maybe.
No, it's 312.
What is it, 312?
Yeah.
312th and
It
First,
was,
the north.
it's a
north-
wetland in
east
there, isn't
corner
it?
of-
No, it's the one right across, you come down past the fire station on First, and on the right-hand side, where everybody puts their political sign, and the guy came through and dug it all out. I mean, what was it?
Corner of,
Do you know what the zoning is there currently?
it's, I
That's
wanna
312.
say it's OP.
And I'm just using this as an example where someone's come in and wanted to be more dense, and the council said, no, you've asked for housing, you can't, is that
Yeah,
now
so-
get changed?
I think, and again, this could be my faulty memory, but my memory is that almost every single one of those situations, it was not a situation where someone had RM 2400 and was asking for RM 1800. It was a situation where they were office park zoned, or they were,
This one's not office park, this was housing, but anyway, we're
Okay.
just,
Yeah.
we're basically, state law says we have to do this, pretty much. So it's not, but we're going back to the old days of King County coming and say, you can put a multifamily here, because it's really dense, and everybody got mad, and we became a city, and now the state said, hey, you can do anything you want, and is that, kind of what we're doing when we go from 36 to 18, right?
I guess the only thing that I would say is that this is not making it so that anything that is currently not multifamily would be able to become multifamily. It's just making stuff that is currently multifamily able to have more dense
Yeah, I
development.
understand that. I'm not,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, we're just making the whole city more dense, which state law says we have to do anyway. Now, if we really wanted to speed it up, can we take away, you don't have to have any permit fees, and we'll just let you do it? And then get to our 5,000 or 11,000 real quick?
It's probably not gonna do it.
Yeah? How bad would that kill the budget? Quite a bit, but we can get it done, right? Get done with this in a year? Okay. Councilman McDaniel, you got your blue light on.
Yeah, you brought up something now, gave me something to think about. What is the definition of multifamily now, then?
Is that how high it goes? I mean, what is the definition now?
So they're attached and stacked dwelling units, so all, the middle housing is, that we talked about earlier tonight, is different. So you'll still be able to do attached or stacked, and there's brand new density standards, so the comp plan or comp plan text amendments and the rezone are some additional modifications, but we're not looking to change the existing multifamily definition, we're adding content related to middle housing.
So if we're going into the one RM, what is that? I'm trying to understand what the 1100, 1150 was. What was the number now?
The new number is 1150, so that's the amount of lot, so if you have a lot, that's the amount of lot area per dwelling unit if you're doing a multifamily project. It's not a unit size or a lot size, it's just a way to establish a density for the site.
All right, so that makes it super dense is what you guys are saying then.
The lowest we had before was 1800, and now this would be 1150.
Okay.
By the way, to come back to the question about what does multifamily mean in the code now? Basically, it's any building that contains 2 or more dwelling units except for middle housing. So middle housing doesn't count as multifamily. It's anything else that has 2 or more dwelling units.
But if I do a sixplex, that's not
It's not
multifamily.
considered multifamily the way we've defined it because that is considered middle housing.
But wouldn't sixplex give me accessibility to multifamily tax exemptions? 6 units or more, I thought that's what the trigger was on that one.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I did want to come back to the fact that you can't actually have a sixplex middle housing wise. If you recall, we've only allowed up to a fourplex. We're not allowing those fiveplexes and sixplexes, but I'm not sure about the MFTE.
The MFTE is limited to
trigger.
certain zones, and I don't think it includes the RM, as I recall. I think just BC and the city center zones.
So that's a good point. So there won't be any middle housing in the zones that have MFTE applied to them.
Interesting.
So I guess one last question, and
Oh, I have a question too.
and then I'll let you go. Sorry about that. Since we're going to this smaller lot size, and we just passed the thing that you can sell the lots, so hopefully we're gonna have a lot more home ownership of middle housing on 1,100 square foot lots, right? That's kind of the goal
Looking to get more home ownership.
at whatever. So hopefully a $100,000 lot will now be 30,000 to the guy buying it. Probably not, but anyway. Okay, Councilmember Honda.
So are all cities going through this same process?
Correct.
So our city won't be, I mean, you know, if someone's looking to develop properties into this type of housing, we're not any more attractive than Auburn or Kent or Edgewood, because everyone's doing the same thing.
There's per the state law, there's a basic set of things you need to adopt, and you can put your own stamp on it to some small degree, but essentially this is a statewide thing that varies by the size of the city. And so for us, that's why we have the 4 to 6. If you have much smaller cities, which we don't really have around us, they have a different standard. They don't need to accommodate that much, but pretty much anyone you talk to knows this is coming just because everybody's dealing with the same thing at the same time.
So is the size of the city based on population?
Correct.
At what,
Milton, Edgewood.
at what point did they measure the population as to determine what cities have to do what?
So it's just based on being over 100,000, we've got the 4 to 6 is the requirement.
So if we drop below 100,000, then what? Do we
No,
change it
there's no
again?
retro applicability, so once we get it in effect, we'll be compliant.
Are we at 100,000? I I've read several census reports that have us below 100,000.
So even if we were the
Sorry,
threshold,
can I jump in? It's 75,000 is
Oh,
is
okay.
the actual threshold. So if you're above 75,000, you're in essentially what's called Tier 1. If you're between 25,000 and 75,000, you're in Tier 2, and then Tier 3 is below 25,000. Those are the three kind of categories of
Okay.
cities. So we're not close to the threshold. We've blown it out of the water.
Okay, all right, well, that answers that, thank you.
So, a question, this is a question for you, Keith, and good presentation so far. You keep talking about 11,000, isn't that the number we're supposed to get for housing? Some, a little less than 12,000, right?
11,260.
11,260. And and 11,260, and this middle housing counts towards that.
Absolutely.
And 20 to 30% of our land could fit into this, is what I heard but if we really wanted to be proactive and make this happen, because it's all going to come down to what people pay, right?
Sure.
We could, as a council, probably break our budget, or we could say, hey, we're not going to have fees and we're going to open it up, come do it in Federal Way like they did when we missed all the building during the great money thing when we had $20,000 a door or something. If we really wanted to encourage this, we could really put our foot to the metal, right?
So, so sure, there's some levers we could pull. I would argue that probably the permit fees are couch change for most of the builders,
Okay.
given what they pay their own consultants and what they pay for land and
Yeah.
construction.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing that would be an incentive for a builder to look at Federal Way is if we could go faster.
Okay.
Time is money,
That's-
and the
that's your
length
ne-
of time it takes to get through the permitting process, that is absolutely what they tend to have comments and opinions on.
Can we do that? Can we make it faster?
It's about resources. If you want to give me and EJ a bunch of more staff, I think we could go faster.
But I guess the question is more staff, more housing. Does the more housing coming faster pay for the staff? When you
Probably,
have permit
not
fees-
unless you guys want to push your fees up significantly more than what they are. Right now, our fees don't come even close to cost recovery in terms of staff costs for permitting. And if you wanted to do that, that's a different kind of funding model than what we have in place right
But,
now.
the question is, we're mandated to get to 11,000. We now just are making it so anybody can build on postage stamp lots.
Yep.
But if we want to really gas it, and you're saying a developer would pay more if it was quicker,
Yep.
what's the ratio? How much more would we have to charge to get it done faster so we don't have to deal with this in 5 years or something? Has any studies been done on that?
I don't know if quantifiably there's been studies done.
Okay. Was there a gut feel? Within grenade level?
I think if the council is interested in this, this could be definitely a conversation we have with master builders.
Okay,
And
well, I don't know
see
if
if
they're,
there's-
I don't know if everybody's interested. I'm just,
Sure.
we pass all this stuff and nobody's gonna do it. Why, other than the state says, why do it? But if we're doing this and we wanna fill up our 11,000 because we have to, maybe we wanna figure out what people would pay and to pay for the staff so we can do it.
Don't we have to show that we're moving towards the 11,000? And this will have an impact on schools, on roads, on the hospital, on the entire city. I don't think we need to do it all at once and have such a huge impact all at once that we may not recover from for a while.
So the 11,260, again, this is a little bit of a nuance, but it's, we have to have zoning capacity. We have to show that we can actually have that built here. Whether
So
or
we
not-
don't need to achieve it, we just need to say we're able to achieve it.
That's because we don't control the market. Now, if ultimately the council wants to say, how do we increase production of housing in our city? There's definitely some things we could probably do, but I think we would want to have a lot of conversation about that before we
Yeah, of course.
started having that conversation publicly.
But you gotta at least open the door to have a discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna add to that. If we're gonna go down that pipeline, I would also like to look at the sewer talking that process. And then the other one we have on the list is going to be the software. I mean, I'm not asking these questions just to ask them. I have some personal interest in this, but there's some software stuff that I think would be a big
I
benefit.
think that's the next thing.
I know.
Okay.
And with that, I mean, the state's saying that we need more density, which, I mean, that'll help pricing and stuff, but I think that if we were to really, as you say, push the pedal to the metal, there'd be a lot of outcry from a lot of the residents saying, hey, slow down. I mean, just because the state wants density doesn't mean that we do.
But if you're a developer and you're going to develop, you're going to look for places to do this. We missed out on all the building that before the interest rates went up. That's why our downtown's still not done. But, maybe we need to look, I'm not saying we should, but maybe we need to look at that. Anyway, you got a motion?
I have a motion. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on May 20th, 2025.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. I think now we're going to talk about informational briefing permitting system. This is what Mr. McDaniel, you've been talking about.
So no more motions.
That's all informational. Oh, is this coming from the, that's why Thomas is here. I thought,
I phoned a friend.
okay.
I was going to say, Keith, you're walking out there, you grew a lot of hair and got taller.
What happened to F?
We just did F.
Oh, so did we do E? Yeah.
We did E.
Before.
Now we're on information briefing
J.
permitting system. It says Mr. Niven, but we have Thomas. Thomas, you're on.
All right, I'm the guest speaker tonight.
Yes, get a friend.
So good evening, Chair Dovey, committee and council members. I'm here to answer kind of questions, give some information as to where we are on the permitting system. So I think the title is a little generic, but knowing kind of a little bit of the backstory behind this, I'll give a brief overview and then we can kind of go from there for questions. I don't have a presentation drafted up, so. So long story short, I think a lot of this comes down to my building permit and the fact that we have 3 permit types: electrical, plumbing, and mechanical, that are fully active and in production on that system. Meaning that if somebody wanted to pull one of those permit types, they could do that through my building permit. Any of the other permit types, so single family, multifamily, commercial, land use processes, or right-of-way, those are not able to be done through the My Building Permit portal. And there's obviously a reason for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here talking to you tonight. And a lot of that kind of goes back to My Building Permit is a great product. I stood before you in 2020 and sold it to you as a great opportunity for the city to centralize building permits and streamline them, especially for the customer side. So this is all customer facing stuff. So we moved forward. Council agreed. We moved forward, and we got on board on that. There's been a couple of missteps throughout the process. Some things we learned later that we needed that we didn't know that we needed at the first time, and a lot of it had to do with connecting 2 systems together. Our permitting system that we have here, that Keith's staff uses, which is called Amanda, and then the My Building Permit product, which is it's not, I shouldn't really call it cloud hosted, but it is. It's not here, but it's developed by City of Bellevue, and it started back in 2002, and they developed something and they've grown it as a kind of a regional resource that people have now wanted to sign on to. And so in order to get our Amanda system connected to My Building Permit, we have to change and modify some of our internal permit type folders, is what they're called in the system. And the reason they're called folder is because if, old days, you would make a folder, like a manila envelope folder, and you'd shove all the stuff, all the permits and information and background stuff into it. In the electronic version, they use the same name, same terminology. And so there are certain attributes, metadata, fields, and whatnot in a folder that's required in order to move that permit forward. And so those folders needed to be modified so that not only do they reflect our current business process internally, but they also have the necessary fields and whatnot to be able to integrate and connect to my building permit. So that way, when an applicant, contractor, whatever, applies for a permit on my building permit, that information can flow through into our system, and then we have a record of it in our permit system. And so that work has taken, the integration component of it has taken a bit longer to kind of figure out exactly the nuts and bolts that we needed to get to that point. And now we're working through the process of modifying the folders. And the single family, the multifamily, and the commercial folder types are right there, about to be completed in our Amanda system. We're working on some fee calculation errors that we're dealing with right now. But there is a guy that works for the company that purchased Amanda, Granicus, that has been helping us with this. And this process has started, the modifying of this process of these folders have started back in 2016 when we moved from an older version of Amanda, version 4, to version 6 that we're on today. And so he's kind of instrumental in this, and his time we've, long story short, we've already paid for a lot of this time to be done, redeveloped. In 2016, we got to a point where those folders were never rolled into production. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the fact of the matter is we're here today, and those folders were developed, but never fully tested and then put into production. And so this guy that developed it he's got a lot of other projects on his plate. So he's been working through this with us and kind of fitting us in where we can. Naturally, that has taken a lot longer than any of us want. And so in the efforts of speeding this forward, moving this forward, I worked with Brian Davis, and we collect money. We collect an automation fee on every permit that we apply for, or that gets processed. And it's either a flat fee or a percentage, depending on the type of permit or the amount of the permit. And so the thought was, well, instead of just trying to leverage the sunk costs that we already have in this, which was about $10,000 back in 2016, why don't we just buy his time so we can get this thing pushed through to the end and get it going. And so that's what we're working on right now. And so we worked on a schedule. We're working on getting an actual scope of work from the company so we can get this thing moving forward. And so for getting this phase 2, based on getting a contract, getting the work done, getting the development, the testing, and go live, puts us, we're estimating at about mid-September. So we've got, or go live on October 1st, for single-family, multifamily, and commercial. Now, that I would hope to get done sooner, but realistically, when we have the development work of the folders, which they're right there, but we don't know why they're not effectively working the way that they should be. That's to add enough buffer to make sure that we can get this going. So that's kind of the information, the process, kind of where we are, why we're there, and kind of a plan to move forward with it. But I'm open for comments, questions, conversation.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Thank you. I appreciate the time you spent with me earlier to go over some of the more granular details of this. The big thing and the reason why I brought this up is my understanding is my my building permits, is that what it's called?
Correct.
Is front-facing, which is what I would engage with from as a resident or as a developer, and then the Amanda is the back end that the city uses and stuff, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then the one thing I know works out really well, as you said, like the mechanicals, the plumbings, the HVAC, any kind of mechanical stuff works really well. I know that we just are about to pass a bunch of information that could potentially increase development, but the one pushback I get when I talk to either engineers or developers is the steps and the processes, like you said, 17 steps, something like that, in order to get the permitting going. And after a conversation earlier today, if I understand you correctly, were you saying the September-ish timeframe, October, let's say October, I'm not gonna say September, October, would that be when we could then have the My Builders software tie in, or would that be when the full project would be really to release live? Because there's two steps. I know we had to get the folders taken care of on the Amanda, and then once that was done, we had to have the mapping or the communications between the My Builders permit and the Amanda. And I said, you told me that's a few months in itself too.
Correct. So you are 100% correct from our conversation earlier. There's two pieces to this puzzle. There's making sure and configuring and refitting is the term that they use. But our internal Amanda system, those particular folders, so that in this case, it would be single family, multifamily, and commercial. This is the phase that we're in. So phase one was, so backing up just a little bit, our previous online portal only accepted plumbing, mechanical, and electrical permit types. And so those, since we were already using an online, we already had an online presence for people to use, those made the most sense to just, let's launch My Building Permit with those ones. So that way it's online permits to online permits, those 3 permit types. So phase 2 is now kind of the money makers for us, which is single family, multifamily, commercial permit types. And so yes, so we've got the Amanda system. We're configuring that to equip My Building Permit, and then there's an integration that connects My Building Permit to Amanda. And so with that, there's another developer that we've contracted that's waiting for these folders to be ready to accept the data. Then he can start his work on making sure that everything is properly configured. And so yes, to get to the question, based on that information, the October 1st date would be to get single-family, multifamily, and commercial permits online so that they can be applied for and processed through the My Building Permit portal.
So that'd be both the contractors would be done with their projects around October then?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if it was October and then October is another 3 months or whatever it is. Okay.
No, so we're looking, based on this timeline, we're looking at a folder refit to be done. So by folder refit, I mean configuring our Amanda system, our permitting system, to be done by around mid-August. And then we start the development for the integration for My Building Permit to connect to those particular 3 permit types. And then that'll run until hold on, my timelines are a little skewed here. So we've got the folder refit completing mid-June, late June, 25th is what we have earmarked for that. And then the development for the integration is from June to August 20th is what we have, again, earmarked for it. And then we test it and we go live on October 1st. So that's the timeline right now for those 3 folder types. And then we'll start our phase 3, which is our land use permit types, or our land use pipes, and then phase 4 will be the right-of-way permit folders.
Gotcha. And then I have a question for Keith. If we had this system up and going and it was the online permitting process, how much time do you think that would save developers and you guys with the back and forth communications of sharing files and stuff like that?
So every time, the way that it works now is once it's fully on MBP, you basically, if you're a developer, you can use the portals to submit your plans that come in, Right now, the way it works, because we're not on MVP, is that I have to ask for a link from the permit center. The permit center then sends me a link. I then upload my plans, and it goes into the permit center. So there's about 2 to 3 days on every cycle that you lose because of having to manually ask for a link.
And I assume that if I have redesigns, every time I do a redesign, I have to reprocess that. So if I have like 6 redesigns because of something that's, we're out another month to, just on timeframes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you guys' work on this too. Thank you.
And just another piece of information, kind of a preview of forthcoming. My building permit shared with us, they're going to be redoing that front end. So they're modernizing it technology-wise. So they've got a project that they've gone out to bid for and selected a finalist for to refresh that. And it's mainly just a technology refresh, usability refresh, and also an integration refresh, which of course will impact us. But this timeline is still going, and when our process is not going to be impacted by the refresh. The refresh, when we have to update our integration, we'll do that accordingly. But the good news is about that is because the new technology that they're using to build the system, because remember, this system was built in 2002 originally, and so technology has changed a lot. And they've modified and updated stuff along the way, but nothing like a full-scale rebuild. So that's forthcoming. They're going to start that in Q3 of this year, and it expects to be a one-year development process before they go live with that new version, like MVP 2.0 or whatever they're calling it. But that's going to further help integration to other agencies like us, and then it's also going to end up saving us money because apparently there's a lot of automation that is capable, and so that'll save them on a lot of the maintenance side to the tune of almost, I think, about $20,000 a year. For us. So it'll lower our overall my building permit fees, which is a good thing.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So is there a cost involved with this?
There's a cost involved in everything, yes.
But is there
Yes.
an increased cost that we need to find money for?
So the good news, all of this stuff. So the Amanda upgrade, the my building permit integration, the work that we're talking about, the proposed additional contract work to have this guy like dedicated to help us through to build these folders out. All of these things, yes, they're all come at a cost. But the good news is, again, we collect money for this specific process. And originally, it's called an automation fee. And so each permit that we issue has an automation fee attached to it. And again, sometimes it's a minimum, and I forget, the minimum years ago was $25, but it might be, it's 42 now, or it's a percentage of the value, whatever's greater. And so, that being said, we have a revenue source that we're dedicating. And years ago, that revenue source was just going into the general fund. And so people were paying an automation fee, but it wouldn't necessarily be dedicated or invested back into our automation, into our permitting system. And so I worked with Ade to get that changed. I think Keith as well, and might actually have been before Keith. I think Brian Davis and I worked together to get that fund, that automation fee into a direct fund for technology specific to this. So it's not just going back to the general fund.
How much is in there?
So end of year 2024, we had around 600,000 in there.
And that's from 2016 or something?
No. Last year alone, we put in, I think, a little over $200,000 into that fund based on the automation. Again, these are all permits, the fees that we got from permits, but we are using them again for Amanda upgrade, which is going to be close to $200,000. We pay my building permit on an ongoing annual basis. So that's roughly $70-ish, $80,000 a year that we're paying. So we're bringing money in, we're bringing the revenue in, but we've earmarked it for certain expenses as well.
So when, this is all done, and at the end of the day, we still need staff to go, to be able to look at the information that it has been sent.
Yes.
And is that going to be where we slow down and where we could potentially have issues?
So I think a lot of that's kind of a question for Keith as well, about his the internal
Right.
permit processes. But I know for a fact, so we have a secure file sharing portal that we use. And so that's the link that Keith is referring to. That's what it is. And so that will go out of the way. So no longer will a developer have to, or an applicant have to request a link and then upload, wait for that link to come back processed by Keith's staff, and then upload the documents, and then they have to do whatever they need to do with the documents. And then if there's and sometimes these projects will go on for a while, and then that link expires, because we can't, from security perspectives, we can't just keep these open logins open. So then that person will have to reach back out to the permit center and say, hey, I've got all my redos, my updates, and I need to submit them again. So that process gets eliminated. In addition, speaking for Keith's staff, I think this is going to be a lot easier for his staff in general, because the entire project will be tracked through the one portal. So they can log into My Building Permit, and they can see all the status of the project there and all the submittals and everything. And then it's also integrated back into the Amanda system. So where they need to process things on the back end for city processes, it'll all be integrated. So there's two systems, but it'll track everything. So at the end of the day, yes, it is more efficient. I don't know how much time it's going to save directly, but I know that whole link sharing, upload file, that goes away. I know that is a pain point for a lot of applicants.
The staffing portion?
That link, because.
Oh, the link
yeah,
that they have to, okay.
Yeah.
So if I can add a couple things. One is, so we talked about the speed and the efficiencies and how this will benefit. I think one of the biggest things that this will do for us is it will make us the same as most of the other jurisdictions. So when you talk to builders do things that they're comfortable with. And if the permit processing system in most of the other cities use My Building Permit, but we use a link, that sets them off immediately, that it's a different process, and that causes them some concern. I think in terms of Councilmember Honda, the staffing obligation, Thomas talked about the folders earlier. So like our staff need to make sure the folders work right. So as our internal processing system kind of gets these permits that come in, it needs to get coded to the right folders, and my staff are working through those to make sure that the consultant that Thomas is using, that is all seamless. But you're gonna have to beta test it a while. I mean, we gotta go live at some point and actually see how this works to make sure it works the way staff believe. But my staff have already put quite a bit of time in kind of sequencing those folders out. And so that's something that I don't think will be a big burden on our department, is to finish that work up as it relates to the rest of this.
It sounds like it'll be better than what it is now, but it also sounds like it could possibly, your department is gonna need maybe an IT person. No? Or,
Not necessarily. I mean, if anything, it goes back to.
because you're stretched thin anyway. I mean, your department is,
We are. I was working with Brian Davis about that, and he's like, how do we get you another person? We were asking in my last one-on-one, and I said, well, the only funding mechanism that we have revenue that's not general fund is potentially this technology fund, and we're already using it for a lot. And to add another 150,000 plus FTE with benefits out of there is not going to work. So the reason why we're contracting a lot of this work out is because we did lose a lot of that institutional knowledge with IT employees that had left. And I mean, this dates back a long, long time, almost to when I first started with the city. Councilmember Dovey might recognize this name, Kurt Reiser. He worked in IT. He was also over GIS. He was GIS supervisor. But he supported the Amanda system pretty much directly himself. And so he was writing a lot of the database code and everything else himself. And he went to City of Kent. And we hired somebody after him. And then they helped it a little bit. But there's a lot of this stuff that we end up losing positions over the years, right? And so right as the recession came through, it took me from 10 down to 7. And so we've slowly brought that back up to 10, but we've taken on a whole lot more responsibilities over the years too. So at the end of the day, yes, I mean, we do, part of the reason for why we're here and why this has taken so long is because we just have too much work to do to get stuff done. But will this, again, we're contracting a lot of this work out, this development work. So that's, and we're using the automation fee to pay for it so that we don't have to do it. And then once it is contracted out and developed, then it is supported by the vendor, by the Amanda vendor. So that's kind of our way to get around having to have another IT staff.
All right, well, if you need one, I mean, just let council know, because
I have four on the wish list.
We've gotten you a
or
person
the wait
before. We can do it again.
Well, the good news is, October's not that far away. So.
Right, and I just want to set the council expectation that, this is, October is phase 2, which is single-family, multifamily, commercial. There's still land use processes, there's still right-of-way, which impacts EJ staff, so.
Well, we get to October, then we can talk about, 2026.
Yeah.
But this is a good start.
And the reason I brought this up on the screen was mainly to show you all the agencies that participate. So if you're a contractor and you're a developer and you're applying for a permit, you use the same system as every single one of these jurisdictions. So, I mean, from Auburn, Bellevue, Bothell, Burien, Edmonds, even Woodway's on here, Sammamish, Mercer Island,
Even Woodway, wow.
That's Eric Faisal.
Kirkland, King County. So it's a widely used system. So it's very familiar with a lot of the contractor developers in the region.
Councilmember Walsh, you have a question?
Yeah, question, I mean, when it does get to staff, once you have this all worked out and the things go to the Amanda system and staff's looking at it, is that something where AI will be able to help speed things up with staff? I mean,
that's a larger conversation. Currently the Amanda system, they have not baked into AI into it. We are in the process of upgrading the Amanda system from version 6 that we're on to version 7. Version 7's been out since about 2020, so we're one of the last few agencies that are on Amanda 6. But Bellevue is using Amanda. Snohomish County is using Amanda, Portland's using Amanda, Kent is using Amanda. So it's a widely used system. Now that all being said, who knows? They're probably thinking up greater ways of in Amanda version 8 to use AI. But currently, that's not the focus of their software for the current version at this moment. So longer answer to say, no, there's no AI yet. But I'm sure, just like any other company, they're looking for ways to integrate that in.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Thomas.
You're welcome.
We'll now move on to information on TC3. This was brought up, I think, last meeting to get a kind of a briefing. So Keith? Your item K.
And is K after J?
And then your item L too, so hey, roll right into it.
You know, absolutely. Awesome. Good evening, Chair Dovey, Committee Member Walsh, and Council Members Keith Niven, Community Development Director. Council asked for an update on TC3. As you recall, this is an informational item. As you recall, we approved a development agreement with One Trent a year ago. It was April 2024. And they were going to go out and find investment partners so that they could move into design permitting and breaking ground on phase one. They have found finding investors difficult. They said that their project in Federal Way does really well. When they talk to investors, they've sought folks locally on the East Coast and up in Canada. And, you know, there's a lot of turmoil right now. First, there was turmoil with the presidential election, and then tariffs. Tariffs affect the construction costs, and potentially a 10% bump in construction costs probably mean that our rents may not cover the cost of building. So here we are, we're a year later, they're still looking for investors. They're still very much dedicated to wanting to build in Federal Way. What we wrote into the development agreement is they have until the end of next year. So basically Jan 1, 2027, if they haven't pulled their first permit, then we have a decision to make as a city in terms of, do we want to sunset the development agreement and start fresh with somebody else? Or do we want to give them an extension? And so that's a conversation. If something hasn't changed between now and the end of next year, we're going to need to have that conversation. So any questions?
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So we found out at FedRec that in November, we have to pay off the interfund loan, which is, I think, Steve said 4.8 million on this property. Where are we going to get that money? I mean, did they put any money down on the property at all?
They do not have to put any money down until they're ready to pull their first permit.
So whenever you buy a piece of property, even a house, you put earnest money down. It seems, why did we write a contract where they put no money down, so they have almost nothing in it at this point, except trying to find investors, which I realize, and I've talked to other developers who say that they know that Trent is working hard to find, investors, but.
So asking somebody to write a multi-million-dollar check for potentially no kind of project, that's a huge carrying cost for a developer to carry that cost without actually getting some return on it.
So that's a normal thing.
So that would have been, I think, extraordinary for them to have paid towards that 4.8 million. I think we were hopeful that by the second quarter of this year, they'd have a project ready to go. But I don't think anybody necessarily foresaw the kind of the instability in the economy at the moment.
So once again, we have 4.8 million that is due, coming up really quickly.
Sure.
Is there a plan on how we're going to pay that back?
That would be a question for Mr. Groom.
I was hoping you'd be able to answer the question.
I try and stay in my swim lane, council member.
So then we're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep in the property until they come up with a project and pay some money?
Yes, it is still our property.
So we can still use it?
Absolutely. We actually wrote something into the development agreement that talked about encouraging some pop-up uses, and Tanya was working on that before she left. And I know there's been some conversations with Stacia about maybe doing something that would be kind of related to the PAC to some extent, but more of a kind of a temporary thing. And that just, I think, kind of died when Tanya left. So maybe when we get the next economic development director here, which will be in 2 weeks, I think, maybe a week. I think she starts on the 16th. There's definitely a conversation I'll have with her about that.
So can it be used for parking for the PAC? Can we improve it so that we could use it for parking?
Might be a question for EJ. Sorry, EJ?
Sorry, can you repeat
So
that?
the question,
Answer
yeah,
a
the
different
question was, could we use more of TC3 for parking
For the
as an interim use?
Yes.
That's a very
there's-
positive yes.
How much work do I have to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's John Hutton, not me. So yes, absolutely. There are barriers out there right now that were put in place, or concrete blocks, so there would need to be some work done to make that happen. I can't say I have looked at the condition of that pavement anytime recently.
It's uneven, and that was being
Yes.
kind.
To figure out if we could, a parking lot portion, the portion where the building was that was demolished, that's gravel, that probably cannot be used as parking for the PAC. But the portion that is the paved parking, old former parking lot, probably could be with some cleanup. I'm not sure what exactly that would entail without going out and personally looking at it or getting parks to look at it, though.
Well, as long as it still remains our responsibility and we need extra parking for the PAC and it's right there, we should try to make it useful. All right, thanks.
I think I heard I need to talk to John about that.
Yeah, he's the one that's really dealt with that property more than I have. We obviously ran the demolition of that house, of the former building. But he's been more in the day-to-day weeds of that, so I can certainly talk to John and see where it goes.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, mine's more of a pipe dream. That was a nice idea. I go to my gym on Friday nights, and right on that little strip right there is a bunch of the Tesla charging stations. And it is so funny to see people on Friday nights sitting there charging their cars, watching TV, and eating their dinners together. So if it doesn't go through, I'd love to plan to put a lot of charging stations up there and do like the old drive-through, where you just sit there and drive, watch your TV. You got a beautiful picture of the mountain in the background.
A drive-in theater?
Drive-in theater to charge your car and make a little money off of it. So that was it.
It's a great
Thanks.
idea.
So my question is, they have until January 2027, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is not that far away, really.
It's not that far away.
And when do you start, unless the interest rates change and things, I mean, 2027 is going to be upon us and, 2027, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to not have anything there. Or something.
Worst case scenario, yes.
So when's the date that you start looking at it and saying, okay, we'd love you to do this, it's not going to work? How far back do you go from January 1, 2027 to make a decision?
I think at least 6 months.
6 months?
So I think by mid next year, if they're still not funded, I think we go talk to developers. Now, ultimately, we have a development agreement with them.
Sure.
But I think ultimately, we'd probably start shopping it around and seeing if somebody's ready to go.
I mean,
Now, the problem is that's going to come with probably some renegotiation of some of the terms. So it'll send us into a different process.
yeah, well, I mean, they have the contract, they control what happens, but,
Yep.
I mean, I'm assuming, do we call them up every now and then and say, how's it going, or?
That is the awkward thing I get to do.
I mean, it's not a bad thing.
Usually about every quarter, maybe a little bit more, I call them and say, hey, any news? And we have a very pleasant phone call.
Yeah, is there anything we could do as a city to help them get across the finish line?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's really about them finding somebody. That first building is, I think my recollection was somewhere around $500 million. It's a lot of money. So getting somebody to kind of be a majority funder for that.
Yeah, so
You know, they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs. They said they haven't started a new project in, I think, over a year.
Yeah.
So I think they're motivated.
Oh, sure. Did they finish their Tacoma project, didn't they?
Yep,
How's that, did that lease up?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, the problem is, we also, besides the economy, we don't have a true comparable to what they want to build. So even though Trouvé is our newest multifamily project, Trouvé is a combination of one podium building with a bunch of three-story woody walk-ups. So that when you figure out the construction cost per unit across the entire project, it's significantly lower than what they would build in their first phase. So you've got to kind of sell the fact that you're near the light rail station and that you're in our downtown, and you know that you're going to have this great civic plaza right next to it and all these things, to somebody from probably out of town who's never been to Federal Way and say, oh, okay, well, tell me what comparables you have. And it's like, well, you got to do some stretching.
Yeah, you're the first one.
Yep.
Okay, and there's really nothing, I mean, the land deal is the land deal. There's nothing, those are small potatoes to the cost of the 500 million.
We gave them a pretty good deal, I
Yeah,
think, on the
yeah.
land. We didn't ask for escalation, so it's kind of frozen at $10 million for,
Yeah.
2 years.
Okay.
I have another question. So we have the development at the Commons Mall that's hopefully going to happen. And then the development at the light rail station, the building, the housing, and then TC3. So are they all competing against each other for the same dollar for this?
For the same market investors. So the Sound Transit parcels, so I'm going to talk about 1 and 2. 3 and 4, we're going to be in the kitchen a little bit, and we get to kind of work on that product. But 1 and 2 will be affordable housing. And so affordable housing gets typically funded from different pots than market rate housing. So they're not competitive. So you could get a project on Sound Transit's properties and either TC3 or the Commons happening at the same time from different funding sources. And the people that will be occupying and leasing those apartments will be from different income stratas. So they're not competitive. TC3 and the Commons would ultimately come from the same bucket, most likely.
For the Commons, I know you're working on a development agreement. Will they be looking for investors too, or are they doing their own investment?
So they would look for, at least what I understand is that the Commons would either lease the property, like a ground lease, to a residential builder. They wouldn't build it themselves. So that's a completely separate, so they would, one of the other, they actually had talked with 2 of the builders that submitted proposals for TC3, kind of prior to us starting the development agreement with them on the Commons property. So they would find a builder and bring them in to do one of their phases.
Well, I really like Trent. I mean, of the 6 options we had, they were really the one that stood out, and yeah.
I agree. I hope it happens. I think it would be great for the city if they can build their project.
If there's anything that we can do to shine, make Federal Way shine, that this is where you want to invest in as a council.
Everything we do actually does make a difference. So for example, the Festival Street, they were excited to hear about. Forming the tax increment financing district, they were excited to hear about. All of those things actually help them market the project, because it shows that the city is also invested in the development of this part of the city. And so all of those things are actually super helpful.
All right, well, thanks for the update.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Move to the Crisis Center.
I don't know if we're still sharing. Thomas left. It doesn't seem like we're still on Zoom, but I'm going to just keep rolling. All right, so this is another informational item. Are we good over there? Sweet. All right. So you guys asked for an update. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. So this started with two different groups, and I think at least 2 hours of conversation about 822 South 333rd Street, or the building that's kind of right up the hill from here. The first was Connections. The second was Emerald Healthcare. And what we have in our city code is this definition, which is for convalescent center. And it's convalescent center means an inpatient facility excluding facilities defined as hospitals, so not hospitals, for patients who are recovering from an illness or who are receiving care for chronic conditions, mental, physical, emotional, or developmental disabilities, terminal illness, or alcohol or drug treatment, and may include assisted living. So that's the definition we have in our city code right now. And for both of those proposals to use that building, it would fall under this definition of convalescent center. So where are convalescent centers allowed? So everything that's in black on the city map, basically the OP zone, the city center frame, city center core, commercial business, and RM zones allow for convalescent centers. So you can see that there's actually quite a bit of the city that we allow these things in, including the building up the street. So two things that we heard. The first one was Connections, and they were responding to a King County levy for a crisis care center. It was approved by the voters in April of '23. The plan is to create a countywide network of 5 crisis care centers. The RFP was out, and they were asking for the city to give them an endorsement so that they could include it in their proposal to King County. And then Emerald Healthcare came in. They are not a crisis care center. They are actually a residential treatment facility. Residential treatment facilities are defined in RCW 7112 and WAC 246-337. They are licensed by the Washington Department of Health, and they are technically a different thing than what the crisis care centers are from a legal standpoint. And if you remember the conversations from those evenings, Connections was asking for your endorsement. They wanted to tap into this levy money, whereas Emerald City Behavioral Health, they wanted your endorsement because ultimately they were going to want to open that facility and tap into Medicare payments and get their funding that way, but it wouldn't come from the county levy. At least that was my understanding. So what do you want to do? I think this is a conversation about what does the council want to do with all of this. One is we can do nothing if you want to. We can continue to put those type of facilities as convalescent centers. They are allowed anywhere within the black areas on the map that I showed earlier, and that is one choice. The second choice is we could create a separate land use that would be, and whether it's called crisis residential facility or something else, we could basically write a new piece of code for Title 19. Part of that process would be to determine what zones that those facilities would be allowed in. And then ultimately, we can talk about whether or not you guys want operational licenses, which is Title 12. So all of this is kind of in front of you all to kind of, I think, have a conversation and let us know if you want us to do anything with any of this.
Yeah, I'll start off on this one. I would like to see a separate requirement for licensing. so that if we do have a crisis center or if we have some of these facilities, and it does not go as previously planned, there is a way to that a license can at least be used as leverage in the future. I believe we have something, how does the one currently work for the day center?
So the day center is considered, so we have licensing provisions right now for permanent supportive housing and emergency shelter. And so the day center falls within that emergency shelter piece. And so they have to have a license, and that licensing is in Title 12 right now. And so, if we were to do something for crisis care centers, we would have to figure out what to put in that license. Like, for example, where the permanent supportive housing and emergency shelter licensing relates to is residents. And even though the day center doesn't have residents, we kind of excluded that part of it for them because it was non-applicable. But for these type of facilities where there could be inpatient residents, depending on kind of exactly which of the models might move forward, it might in some ways be similar to the permanent supportive housing, but we'd also have to consider that some of those types of facilities, for example, under the licensing for permanent supportive housing and emergency shelter, it says that you could only be a resident there if you are referred by someone. Whereas what we heard, at least from Connections, is they were proposing that you could just walk in if you were having a bad day,
Drop
right?
off, too.
So I think we'd have to think through some of those provisions as it relates to the other types of licensing we have and kind of suck those out and try and problem solve if there are other things we would want it to, like, for example, we talked for a long time about transportation. And if somebody got picked up by EMT or police in a different community and got brought to a facility in Federal Way, what happens when they're done and they come out? Are they transported back or are they just walking the streets of Federal Way? So that is very different than housing, where somebody is maybe living in permanent supportive housing for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. So I think we'd have to think through some of that.
Okay. And then would you recommend two separate ones, one for the crisis and one for more of this treatment facility? Or would you say that you can do one license that would cover both of them with some nuances in the licensing themselves?
I'd have to talk about that with the city attorney. I mean, my inclination, but I'm kind of let's make less gradations as possible, is let's see if we can have one license that would cover both types of facilities and have those type of facilities pulled out from the convalescent center definition so that it's clear that those type of facilities are different.
Yeah. And again, I guess just to wrap up for my 2 cents, I'd like to see the, like you said, conversation. I think that should be pulled apart. I think it was too much underneath the one category that doesn't make sense. I'd like to see a new kind of license under Title 12, and then probably looking at the land location. That's a pretty broad area you can stick them in. I figured that maybe it'd be an opportunity for us to maybe select the locations in the future that if we do have more of these where they could or could not be allowed. So, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Can you send this map to us again, but have streets on there? So I can't figure out where some of these areas are.
Absolutely.
And also, as Councilmember McDaniel said, there's a lot of area in Federal Way that a crisis center could go to.
Yes.
Did the city do that so that, well, it seems like there's they could go just about in any part of Federal Way. And maybe we need to look at that and determine if that's really what we want.
So, and just again, spitballing with you, I haven't thought this through. But like, for example, right now it allows it in multifamily zones. I would say that I don't know that it makes sense for a crisis care facility to be in a multifamily zone. So if you sucked that
Like
out
on
of.
the first floor of a
Well, but those, no, because those first floor, when you're talking about those mixed-use zones, that's more BC or city center core. But the straight multifamily, just, you've got stacked flats that are maybe 3 stories high, like, that's not really where you want one of these, I don't think. There's no services, they're not. So once you take that one out, for example, this map's gonna change dramatically. All these things that are on the west side of the city, these are all gonna disappear, because most of those are RM zones. And then we need to talk about, like, around here, in the office park zones, and maybe it makes sense for there, maybe it doesn't, but there's gonna need to be a little bit of a public conversation to think about when we start to tinker with what zones this will be allowed in.
Yeah, I think that's really necessary after what the community has told us and what we've been discussing. We need to look at where we would allow these.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my question, not so much with the zones, I mean, is what's the process? I mean, as a council, it's been approved for that one site that you showed us that Emerald City or Emerald whatever is going to move ahead. What's the timeline on that, and what's the process?
So we contacted the property owner today. There's nobody under contract for that property.
I see. So
nobody's in for permits, nobody's doing anything, so I can't answer your question because there's no project.
So as of right now, this council voted to support, which so they can get funding if they move forward to Medicare. But right now, there's nothing happening because there's no deal with the landlord or the association that wants to do this, no permits. So there's nothing actually going on.
There's nothing going on. Actually, the property owner said if there's any tenants we can help him with, find, he'd be excited to have a conversation about that.
Okay, and then if the landlord does a deal with this company, what's the timeline from start to finish? I mean, there's a lot of permitting that has to be done, and
so the previous owner, which was RI, they proceeded with a conversion of that building as a 2-step conversion. So they submitted their first building permits, they got their land use approval, they submitted their first building permit, pulled that building permit, did some construction work, and then it expired. They never asked for a final inspection. So that permit is expired. The second permit that they submitted for, it went through one review and then they never resubmitted on it. So it expired. So everything that RI has done is expired. So anybody coming in now has to say, all right, this was permitted 3 years ago. How do I revive that permit? And the answer may be you have to submit a new permit. So there's a process to go through, and since nobody's asking, we're not drawing lines yet. Sorry, all those cough drops somehow left with Council President Kochmar.
he's got what is the one you could use, the roll?
It's the one that he gave me one time. It's the
Ricola Originals.
Ricola, one from Switzerland.
That's the go-to.
You sold me on it, Keith.
I like Fisherman's, whatever it is. What's it?
Fisherman's Friend.
Fisherman's Friend, okay. Okay, so really right now, you're giving us an overview of anybody could do what the groups came to.
Yeah.
And right now, although we have a recommendation from our council, there's nothing happening.
There's nothing happening, and that building could be used for a number of different
Yeah,
things.
so if somebody comes in and leases it from the landlord, that Emerald thing may not even be there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, so this is an off-the-wall question of this. We've seen a memo from the mayor that we may get some money from DC to work with Red Lion and move the day center or whatever. Is anything happening on that from a staff standpoint? Are we talking to those people and trying to put that deal together, or is that just?
So the problem is we don't control the timing of any of that, right?
Correct.
So it's up to King County to finish the construction work on the Red Lion.
Yeah.
Now, the good news is the pace at which the county's moving and the time it takes to actually get a federal appropriation, those probably are going to line up about perfectly. So So I'm thinking that probably we just need to keep our eye on the ball, but so far, at least King County and Catholic Community Services have been supportive of the idea of moving the day center to the Red Lion Pool Building.
So, but is any, I mean, I know it's in your department, and it's
Yep.
not over here, but has anybody got everybody in the room and said, hey, let's talk about this and figure out how we're gonna do it?
So part of, I mean, so we still don't have the appropriation that you guys got from Representative Smith for the $864,000 from like a year ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that's still, has it been 3 years? Oh my God. So we still don't have that money. So like this money, like, it's gonna take a while to show up. That's just the way that works.
Yeah, I get it.
So, yeah.
Okay, well,
They haven't printed it yet.
they haven't printed it yet, okay. Okay. Does anybody else have?
May not even be there.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions on this? Okay.
All right, so what I heard is council would like, besides a map with streets on it, the council would like for us to start working on some code amendments and some licensing for a new land use.
Yeah, we probably need to have some discussion about it. I mean, for me, this is not the highest priority of what you're doing right now. This land things we're doing to 1,100 square feet for a lot is probably a bigger deal, but anyway. Does everybody want them to work on this and come back? What?
I'd like to have, like, some conversation, like.
Yeah, was it
Yeah.
a month from now, 2 months from now? What's
2 months.
Yeah.
Fine with that.
And
how much time do you need to come back without killing your staff?
We can have a briefing in August.
Okay, August, okay? August works.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe, I mean, are there other cities that have faced this and done anything that we can take a look at them, or are we the trailblazers with doing anything?
We can look at some other cities from a licensing perspective. We had to make that one up from scratch for permanent supportive housing. So my guess is we probably won't find much licensing examples from other cities, but we might find some definitions in city codes in terms of what to call this thing to make sure we're, at least if it can be one thing as opposed to four things, I'd like it to be one thing.
Okay, August would be it. And-
Okay.
And I know, go ahead, you have
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Since you brought up permanent supportive housing.
Yep.
I thought they were going to be open in April for 16 units, so it's May, last time I checked. So what's going on with that?
They have not asked for inspections. So,
I see work vehicles going in and out
Yeah.
of that, so obviously they're working.
I can check with my building guys on the extended stay and give you guys, I'll email you an update on
Okay.
what we know.
Might
mean,
be the
it's
permitting
a-
system.
You know, it would be nice if they, since they did say,
I know.
What
They
they
did,
said.
they did community outreach and said that.
yes,
So, yep.
okay.
And be,
Something about the speed at the county moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
so one last question before Mr. Smith comes up and talks about light rail. This kind of ties them together. I know from this committee, we had a discussion about $75,000 and Sound Transit and
Yes.
doing a study together.
Yes.
I don't know if Mr. Smith is going to talk about that, but,
No, that was me.
okay, I know that, and Brian said that you were working on that, or
Yeah.
what's the update on, getting together and hopefully crafting something?
So there's a draft that Sound Transit took the first stab at it, sent it our direction. We tweaked it. It then went to the mayor's office and sat there for a bit. And then it came back and went to Sound Transit. And I think we just need to put it on a committee agenda to talk about. So that could probably be
Can we have it
July.
next month?
That is next month. Next month is, sorry, I'm way too far down the road. Yeah, next month would be June.
Yes.
Let's try and do
mean,
June.
I would hate to see us, that was what, 2 months ago we
Yeah,
started?
no,
And then all of a sudden they do something different.
What was that? I missed.
We talked about spending, it was 150,000 to a joint venture. We pay 75, they pay 75.
to do the land plan for
And do
3
a
and
land
4.
plan for the parts, the property.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I think everybody said, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
let's move ahead.
So yeah, I'll I'll try and bring you guys a draft of the deal points, because that's kind of the level that we're at yet. We're not to a legal document in June.
Okay. Be good. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Keith.
Good evening.
You got to wait all this time, so it's,
I know.
we'll put you at the front next month.
Because he does have a baby at home.
Oh, well, okay, then we'll move you, mark that down. Next time he gets to go
I
first.
thought you had to call you esteemed council members first.
Yeah. You gotta learn how to do
Good
that.
evening, esteemed council members.
Okay, move him to item B.
Just after Leonard.
The important question, how's the baby?
Good. He's good.
How
He's
old?
big. 7 months.
7 months, all right, congrats.
His wife probably wants him home.
Yeah,
He's heavy, so it's a big commitment to carry him.
yeah.
So, good evening. I'm Kent Smith, here to present on the Sound Transit updates within Federal Way. So, for Federal Way Link Extension, everything north of 317th, still working on some haul route restoration, which is portions of South Star Lake Road and Military Road. They're doing comms, electrical, live wire testing, a little bit of minor landscaping, and a lot of punch list items up and down the corridor. And then they're still working on the traffic mitigation project. It's progressing to the work that will finally kind of affect Federal Way, which is at the 99 and 272nd intersection, but right now they're mostly working on portions further north. For the city center, they're still working on the roundabout at 23rd and 317th, but they have completed most of the splitter islands. They are on the center island right now. They just poured the curb. A lot of various concrete panel replacements, repair in a lot of locations, just as damage occurred, so they're working on some of those. The final sidewalk landscaping and other ADA improvements still coming in for the new 22nd Avenue and the South 318th. And they have demoed the old transit center. They're still working on, some of the base material, but basically the main bus shelter is demo completely gone. The station work, escalator testing and inspections, and adjustments to elevator landings, just before doing some final building inspections for for TCO, essentially. So they've gotten a lot of it done at this point, where they're looking to potentially open some additional rooms for use. The end-of-line facility, also preparing for final building inspections. They're getting close there as well. Camera and communication installations and testing is ongoing for the new garage. And then improvements to the ped access to the existing King County Park and Ride along South 322nd is wrapping up, which includes sidewalk upgrades, curb ramp upgrades, and some additional street lighting and signage. For the operations and maintenance facility south, there's nothing significant since the last time I was here. They're really we're working on the DA with Sound Transit. For Tacoma Dome Link Extension, the Sound Transit staff is scheduled to present their recommendation for the preferred alternative for the south section of Federal Way at the May 8th System Expansion Committee, so in a few days. And then just following that, the actual committee will make a recommendation for a preferred alternative that goes to the full board to consider. So potentially as soon as June 26th, the board could vote to confirm, modify, or identify the preferred alternative for Federal Way. So hopefully soon, and we'll know some more. And then I'll answer any questions.
If they approve it on the 26th, going south to Tacoma, then what's the next timeline? I mean, what do they do next?
Essentially from there, they get the green light to advance the design. So they'll start finalizing some of the specifics on how it interacts in like specific parcels and where it's gonna go back and forth. They spoke today at a meeting that they're looking at potentially modifying some of the section in the south that's just outside of Federal Way. So it's stuff like that. They're looking at these little minor sections that if we move it this way, we'll avoid this potential area. So it goes from like I don't know what the percentage is now, but it'll get them to like a 10% design where they have a real good understanding of what things are.
With the Tacoma Dome Link extension, are they leaning towards the west or east of Pack Highway?
As I know now, it was the west is going to be their recommendation, with a slight shift they just gave me today, like this afternoon before this meeting, so I didn't have a chance to update it. But with a slight shift as they get into Milton, that basically crosses back over to the east side, and then they go through some other stuff down further south.
Councilman Daniel?
Yeah, I have a question for legal. Let's say they come back and they provide us with this design that we just don't like. Do we have any legal recourse?
Design on what particularly?
They choose a path that we decide, well, that really destroys way too much for our city and stuff like that. Is there any recourse to what Sound Transit chooses?
Very unlikely. We'd have to be, in order to have any ability to challenge that, we'd need to be commenting and then probably appealing and litigating the underlying environmental determinations that are supporting their choice of where those things go. I don't think there's any appetite or ability / bandwidth for us to do that at this point. So limited is the answer.
Gotcha.
Anything more than that gets a little complicated and it depends-y type answer.
Gotcha. And let's just say if we did have the stomach or appetite, for some reason it did happen, how long would that drag through on litigation? Is it 3 to 5 years?
Easily, sure.
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. The housing projects at the station right now, the properties, the 2 properties that are up for sale or whatever, I know that El Centro del Raza is looking at them. Do you know when a decision will be made at who will be the developer of those projects?
My understanding was later this year was when they would choose, I think their consultant to then pick a developer. So it would be a little ways out. Keith actually probably has more knowledge on it than I do.
My memory is that the RFP, and Kent, if you remember something different, let me know, but my memory is that the RFP for those wasn't going to go out until June-ish. And I think it was even a little more nebulous than that. It was like early second quarter or second quarter, like, that type of language. So it was like kind of like mid-year-ish for the RFP, and then they've got to look at all that stuff and then select based off of it. So that's consistent with what Kent said in terms of sometime this year, maybe.
And have they found a way to cross the Puyallup River to get into Tacoma?
Not yet. They still have 2 proposals still holding. One was the piers within the waterway, and one is the long span bridge. They haven't decided yet, so.
Do you know when that decision's going to be made?
I don't think they need to make it until they get further into design or until they hear from the tribes that give them an actual opinion, because they've made the case for both as one blocks the view of Mount Rainier, the other has the environmental impact of the piers within the waterway. So I'm not totally sure.
Interesting. Okay, thanks.
I will make a comment. I rode the Sound Transit to Seattle twice last week, and there's a lot of building going on along that route. I mean, there's a lot. Up by the airport, there's 3 projects going, and then all up through whatever, anyway, Rainier Valley. It's a lot going on. Okay, anybody have anything they'd like to add for future meeting, which will be June 2nd, 5 p.m., or anything else anyone wants to bring up? Okay, we'll now adjourn. Thank you.